Welcome back to Reds Fusion LFC, the home of every breaking Liverpool update, transfer bombshell, and insider scoop. Today we've got huge news straight from Anfield. Alexander Isak to Liverpool is heating up, Newcastle are in meltdown, and Marc Guehi sparks fresh transfer intrigue. Stick around because Fabrizio Romano and Sky Sports have dropped absolute bombshells you don't want to miss. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with every twist and turn. In the transfer window, Liverpool agrees to crucial transfer as latest Alexander Isak domino falls. Ben Doak's $25 million, $33.8 million move to Bournemouth is set to be the second in a row of transfer dominoes that could be set to benefit Liverpool later in the window. The impending sale of Ben Doak to Bournemouth could set off a chain reaction of transfers that may ultimately benefit Liverpool. The $25 million, $33.8 million exit of the Scottish winger is being orchestrated by the Cherries as a replacement for Dango Ouattara, whose move to Brentford was confirmed over the weekend. This should pave the way for Newcastle to finally secure Yoane Wissa, who has made it clear he wants to leave the G-Tech Community Stadium. If Wissa secures his desired move to Newcastle, it would mark the first phase of its plan to revamp its attack following Callum Wilson's departure and the controversy surrounding Alexander Isak. The latter was subjected to chants of "one greedy Bob" from the Newcastle fans during Saturday's goalless draw at Aston Villa. While it's doubtful that Isak heard those chants given his absence on the day, Newcastle manager Eddie Howe once again faced a barrage of questions about his unsettled star striker before and after the match. "Of course, I've said many times I want him to train and play," Howe said. "I've had those conversations with him, but the details of these conversations need to remain private. Training alone, is not something you ever want to see. You want to see him with the squad? You want to see him happy and enjoying his football. He is contracted to us. He is here, so for me, that is an unfortunate situation. Yes, I believe there is a way back for Isak. But of course, discussions and talks would need to take place for that to happen. But that's for another day. Today is Aston Villa and making sure we perform as well as we can." The coverage from journalists in the Northeast has remained steadfast regarding Newcastle's interest in Wissa. His potential signing shouldn't be interpreted as the club facilitating Isak's departure, though it would at least allow the hierarchy to concentrate on bringing in another striker to bolster their current options, despite operating without a sporting director. Thus far, the Magpies' search for an Isak replacement has yielded no results. Having missed out on targets such as João Pedro and Liam Delap to Chelsea, and most recently Benjamin Sesko to Manchester United, Howe maintains that reintegration remains possible for Isak, though whether this position stems from a wish to preserve the player's market value in the transfer window's closing weeks is known only to those within St. James's Park. After making a $110 million, $148.9 million bid for Isak earlier in the month, Liverpool is now biding its time, ready to re-engage. If Newcastle shows any signs of wavering over its number 14, who netted 23 Premier League goals last season, there's been a degree of sympathy for Howe as this saga has dominated headlines and shaped the narrative at pre- and post-match press conferences throughout the summer. It's an unwelcome distraction for the Magpies manager as he prepares his squad for a new season that includes a return to the Champions League. Arne Slot gets Liverpool boost for Newcastle amid Alexander Isak transfer drama. Look at Liverpool's midfield issues and why Arne Slot has the perfect chance to fix it before next week's trip to Newcastle United. If the next stage of Arne Slot's Liverpool evolution is now bordering on a revolution, there is at least continuity in his Anfield engine room. While the Reds have a new fullback pairing of Jeremy Frimpong and Milos Kerkez starting to move away from the now legendary tandem of Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson, the latter of whom remains a high-class alternative for Slot, there is also a new leader of the line in 79mm striker. Hugo Ekitike Florian Wirtz has arrived for a club record fee of 116 meters from Bayer Leverkusen. And the exciting Germany international is much more the archetypal number 10 to the one preferred last season in the tireless, hard-running Dominik Szoboszlai, who started deeper against Bournemouth on Friday evening. But on the whole, Slot still has the same options available when constructing his weekly jigsaw puzzle in midfield. There are issues to resolve via the training pitch just now, with the Premier League champions looking too open and exposed in transitions and turnovers, and it's telling that the 2 goals shipped in the 4-2 win over Bournemouth means they have already conceded as many goals from counterattacks as they did across the entirety of last season. The return of the metronomic Ryan Gravenberch, with his poise, balance, and ability to take care of the ball in tight spaces, will undoubtedly help after his suspension on Friday. But Slot fixing the issue of his team being brutally countered, a theme also on display in the Community Shield against Crystal Palace, will go a long way towards determining how many points are on the board by the September international break. The big plus point for the Reds head coach and his staff is that kicking things off on the opening weekend means they have 10 days between games before their next assignment at Newcastle United on August 25th. That match, given the ongoing Alexander Isak situation, promises to be particularly explosive, even more so given it is the Magpies' first home fixture of the new campaign. How Liverpool stand up to the physical and intense Newcastle will have a huge say. In the result, and tightening up the midfield gaps when out of possession is something that must be achieved before that visit to the powder keg that will be St. James's Park on the night. So that time on the training pitch between the 2 fixtures could yet prove to be integral to ironing out the wrinkles of pre-season. It means extra sessions and building up the base levels of fitness alongside the technical and video analysis meetings before that game with Eddie Howe's men. A quiet week to work on the details, and the specifics might be all Slot needs to toughen up the soft underbelly visible at times so far this summer. Liverpool transfer domino set to fall as Eddie Howe makes fresh Newcastle admission. Liverpool continue to await encouragement from Newcastle United over Alexander Isak as Ben Doak moves closer to joining Bournemouth for 25 million. The sale of Ben Doak to Bournemouth is expected to be the second in a row of transfer dominoes that could be set to benefit Liverpool later in the window. The 25-minute departure of the Scotland international has been facilitated by the Cherries to replace Dango Ouattara, whose near 40-minute club record move to Brentford was ratified over the weekend. That, in turn, should allow Brentford to allow Newcastle United to finally complete their summer-long pursuit of Yoane Wissa, who has made it clear he sees his future away from the G-Tech Community Stadium. And if Wissa gets his dream move to Newcastle United, it completes what is said to be stage 1 of their efforts to restructure their attack following the exit of Callum Wilson and the Furore around a certain Alexander Isak, who was subjected to chants of one greedy baby from the Magpies' traveling support after Saturday's goalless at Aston Villa. It's unlikely Isak heard those chants given he was nowhere to be seen on the day. But once more, Newcastle boss Eddie Howe was subjected to a barrage of questions about his want-away star striker before and after the game. Of course, I've said many times I want him to train and play, Howe said. I've had those conversations with him, but the details of these conversations need to remain private. Training alone is not something you ever want to see. You want to see him with the squad, you want to see him happy and enjoying his football. He is contracted to us. He is here, so for me, that is an unfortunate situation. Yes, I believe there is a way back for Isak. But of course, discussions and talks would need to take place for that to happen. But that's for another day. Today is Aston Villa and making sure we perform as well as we can. The reporting from those in the Northeast has always been consistent around Newcastle's pursuit of Wissa. His potential arrival should not be seen as the club greasing the wheels of Isak's exit, but it will at least mean the focus from an operation without a sporting director can turn to securing another frontman to supplement what is already in the ranks. So far, the Magpies' pursuit of an Isak successor has proven fruitless. Having lost out on the likes of João Pedro and Liam Delap to Chelsea, and more recently Benjamin Sesko, whose 73mm move to Manchester United saw him make his debut off the bench in Sunday's 1-0 home loss to Arsenal. Howe insists reintegration is still a possibility for Isak, but how much of that stance is fueled by a desire to ensure the player's valuation doesn't dramatically drop in the final fortnight of the window, only those on the inside of St. James's Park will know. Having tabled an offer of 110 meters earlier in the month for Isak, Liverpool are playing a waiting game now and are coiled to return to the table if given any encouragement by Newcastle over their number 14, who scored 23 Premier League goals last season. Marc Guehi Liverpool transfer intrigue grows after Crystal Palace. Snub Liverpool are continuing to hold talks with Crystal Palace over a transfer for England international centre-back Marc Guehi. Liverpool remain in talks with Crystal Palace over a move for Marc Guehi after the defender became embroiled in controversy at the weekend. Guehi was caught on camera appearing to snub Palace manager Oliver Glasner as the pair left the field following the goalless Premier League draw at Chelsea on Sunday afternoon. The Reds opened negotiations with Palace last week over the transfer of Guehi, with the player understood to be keen on making the switch to Anfield. While the 25-year-old has less than 12 months remaining on his current deal, Palace chairman Steve Parish is determined Guehi won't be allowed to leave on the cheap. Palace boss Glasner had no issue in starting Guehi at Stamford Bridge, with the defender responsible for an offense that saw Ebereki Eze's potential match-winning free kick ruled out on a lesser-known technicality, and with Eze also being linked heavily with a move away from Selhurst Park before the deadline on September 1st, both Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur are said to be interested. Glasner has insisted he will continue to pick players, despite transfer speculation. As much as I know, Eze has a contract with Crystal Palace. He's a Crystal Palace player, and he showed it today, said Glasner. As long as he is a Palace player and performs like this, he will play for us. Nobody has told me something else. The players are giving their answer to press speculation week by week, last week winning against Liverpool on penalties in the Community Shield and here against the club world champions. Meanwhile, former Nottingham Forest and Celtic midfielder Roy Keane, now a Sky Sports pundit, has dismissed those reading too much into the incident involving Glasner and Guehi. "Why has this been happening for the last year or two?" said Keane, who also had a spell at Manchester United as a player. "Managers come on the pitch and shake hands with everybody when you have had a tough game. Guehi's just had a tough match, he's probably physically exhausted, and the manager's coming up trying to chit-chat, knowing there's talk about him leaving. As a player, you don't want to get involved with that. I've had managers come up after the game. What's up with you? If you want to chat, we'll do it inside. Managers all want to do something on the pitch. That's come in the last few years. What happened to a manager shaking the other manager's hand and walking down the tunnel? It's just a league match. I'm trying to see it from the player's point of view. He's had a tough game, and the manager, are you playing games?" Newcastle risk transfer backlash over handling of Alexander Isak to Liverpool. Saga Alexander Isak was nowhere to be seen during Newcastle's first Premier League game of the season on the weekend, with the standoff between star player and club continuing. Newcastle could face a transfer backlash after the Alexander Isak saga. The Toon Army are desperate to bring in replacements with Paris Saint-Germain's Goncalo Ramos on their wanted list for a new NO9. That would enable Newcastle to cash in on want-away striker Isak, with Liverpool pushing to land the Sweden international. But there are fears among top agents that if Newcastle are digging in and playing hardball over Isak, then it sets a worrying precedent for future targets. Top strikers always want to know that if they thrive and succeed, then they would be allowed to make the next step to a bigger club. Isak has made it clear he wants to leave Newcastle. The fans have turned on him, and it now looks to be an ugly standoff. That could put down a bad marker for future targets, because if they see Newcastle blocking potential progress, then it would be a red flag for some big-name strikers. Newcastle have already missed out on Benjamin Sesko, João Pedro, and Hugo Ekitike, who have gone to Manchester United Chelsea and Liverpool respectively. Ramos, 24, is not a regular starter at PSG under Luis Enrique, and Newcastle tried and failed to get him earlier in the window, but were warned off. Portugal striker Ramos appeared to commit his future to PSG last week, but Newcastle are still on the hunt. And yet big names are likely to want assurances. Newcastle are in the Champions League, have struggled to attract big names this summer, and the Isak factor could be playing a part. While no one expects Newcastle to roll over and sell their best players, they are playing hardball over Isak after Liverpool had a 120 meters offer turned down. Isak has claimed he had an agreement to allow him to leave this summer, but the club are holding firm. Liverpool are only likely to come back if Newcastle find replacements and are willing to up their price. But Isak was left out of Newcastle's opening fixture at Aston Villa on Saturday, and manager Eddie Howe is facing a striker. Newcastle are also in the mix for Brentford winger Jon Wissa to boost their attacking options. But Brentford are holding out for 60 million plus, and Newcastle have got nowhere to meeting the price. Brentford do not want to sell despite Wissa not being involved for their defeat at Nottingham Forest on Sunday. Speaking after their 0-0 draw with Aston Villa on Saturday, Eddie Howe said, "Nothing has changed. The door is well and truly open. He has to decide what he wants to do. We would like a resolution. We need that clarity. You don't need any kind of distraction." Sweden boss wades in on Alexander Isak transfer saga after talks with Liverpool target. "I know. Liverpool transfer target Alexander Isak has been criticized in some quarters for his actions this summer, but national team boss Jon Dahl Tomasson has stuck up for him. Sweden manager Jon Dahl Tomasson has leapt to the defense of Newcastle United striker Alexander Isak, who wants to leave the Northeast and sign for Liverpool this summer. So far, Newcastle has been unwilling to change its not-for-sale stance, with Liverpool having seen one bid turned down. But Isak missed the Magpies' goalless draw with Aston Villa at the weekend, and he has been training alone rather than with his teammates. "First of all, Alex is an extremely professional player," Dahl Tomasson told Fotbollskanalen. "A fantastic character and personality. I have spoken to Alex a lot during this period. Situations like this are quite complex. These are extremely complex environments that the players operate in. I'm sure it will work out in the end, but you have to know the whole picture before you draw conclusions. That's always a good tip. I don't think we know the whole story. I don't know the whole picture either. It's quite normal because there's a lot of politics in a football club. But one thing is for sure. Alex is a great guy and very professional. We should all be very careful about drawing conclusions because we don't know the bigger picture. Sweden will face Slovenia and Kosovo in World Cup qualifiers next month, but it remains to be seen whether Isak will be involved if he doesn't. Play for Newcastle or Liverpool, in the meantime to regain sharpness. There is time, Dahl Tomasson said. He is a professional and I know he has been training. Of course, he hasn't trained with a team and hasn't played any matches. Let's wait and see. We will have a good chat, Alex and I, and hopefully he will be back in team training soon." Newcastle fans turned on Isak in the away end, loudly singing about him being greedy. But head coach Eddie Howe then insisted that there was still a route back for the 25-year-old forward. "Nothing has changed," Howe said. "The door is well and truly open. He has to decide what he wants to do. We would like a resolution. We need that clarity. You don't need any kind of distraction. I am not in control of that. There is one person. Who can control that? Let's wait and see. I have made my stance clear. I am concentrating on the team."